If you ever stop and watch a child, you realize they're basically the world's most relentless scientists, right? They're constantly questioning, poking, exploring, just trying to figure out how everything works. Today, we're going to dive into how the Montessori method takes that incredible, natural power of wonder and just runs with it.
And it always starts with those really big questions, the ones that kind of stump you for a second, but they ask with such genuine curiosity.
And then it's the stuff we see every single day. For us, it's just a leaf falling. For a child, that's a mystery, a puzzle that absolutely needs to be solved.
And yet, it even comes down to the smallest moments of play. See, these aren't just random questions. This is it. This is the foundation of real scientific thinking. And Montessori science is all about leaning into that, 100%. Okay, so how does this really work? Well, the whole philosophy kind of boils down to this one simple but really powerful idea. Real learning doesn't start with an answer, it starts with the question.
So what is Montessori science then? At its core, it's a total shift in how we think about teaching. The point isn't to just cram a kid's head full of facts. No, the real goal is to light this little fire of curiosity that hopefully they'll carry with them their whole life. And this is where you see the huge difference, right? A more standard approach, well, it often jumps right to giving the correct answer. But the Montessori way, it flips that completely on its head. It actually treasures the question itself and gives the child the space to find their own path to the answer.
And this really gets to the long-term goals. Look, it's not just about knowing that vinegar and baking soda make a fizz. It's about building the reasoning skills to figure out why. It's about fostering the independence to try it for yourself. And most importantly, it's about keeping that sense of wonder alive.
All right, so let's get practical. How does this whole philosophy of wonder actually play out in a classroom? What does it look like?
Well, the curriculum covers all the big areas you'd expect. You've got physical science, biology, earth science, the whole deal. But here's the key. Every single lesson is built to be simple, concrete, and totally hands-on. We're not talking about boring lectures here. Let's walk through a classic example, something like a sink or float activity. A kid is playing with a bowl of water, they drop a stone in, it sinks. Then they drop a leaf in, and it floats. Now, our first instinct, right, is to jump in and start explaining density. But a Montessori teacher, they just watch. And then they ask a really simple but powerful question. What do you notice? And that's it. That one question invites the child to really look, to think, to compare, and to come up with their own idea. That little aha moment when they figure it out, that's all theirs. And that story just perfectly sums up this whole idea. The experience, the discovery, that's the real teacher. The adult is more of a guide, a facilitator. The deepest learning comes straight from the child's own hands-on interaction with the world.
So how do all these little individual discoveries add up to something bigger? Well, it's all about building a foundation, a framework for learning that lasts a lifetime.
And this is maybe the most important part to get. Look, learning that a stone sinks, that's just a fact. But learning how to find out for yourself, learning how to observe and question and test your ideas, that's a skill you can use forever. The process is way more valuable than any single piece of information. And the best part is, you can do this anywhere. You don't need some fancy science lab. Just keep the experiment simple. Ask open-ended questions, the kind you can't just answer with yes or no. And maybe the hardest part, learn to step back and just watch. Let the child lead. And don't forget, the best classroom in the world is right outside your door. So, as we bring this all together, it's really about the lasting impact, isn't it? It's about fundamentally changing our whole relationship with knowledge, shifting our focus away from having all the answers and toward falling in love with the questions.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if the goal of learning wasn't to know everything? What if instead the goal was to never stop wondering, to always keep asking why? Because that powerful idea, well, that's what's at the very heart of Montessori science.